You won't want to miss this. Before we jump in, hit subscribe, like this video, and drop a comment. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. Ethan Quinn tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his modified electric cruiser, the synthetic hum of its engine thrumming pleasantly through the cabin. Though it was a silent vehicle by design, Ethan had installed an artificial sound generator that mimicked the low growl of a classic combustion engine. He liked the way it turned heads, especially in the quiet streets of the city's commercial district. The cruiser slid smoothly into the parking lot of Novomart, a towering glass-walled supermarket that prided itself on offering everything from basic staples to exotic imports. Ethan adjusted his augmented reality glasses, the subtle interface displaying notifications about his latest drone modifications and his steadily rising crypto portfolio. He smirked to himself. Things were looking good. "Quinn," called a cheerful voice from the side. Ethan glanced over to see Jax, the automated delivery bot assigned to Novomart, loading grocery bags into the trunk of an elderly woman's self-driving car. The bot waved one mechanical arm in his direction while its other appendages worked in precise, mechanical coordination. "Still living large, heh?" Jax's pre-programmed tone was upbeat and just human enough to sound conversational. "Why settle for anything else?" Ethan quipped back, grinning. "You should upgrade yourself sometime. Maybe get some chrome plating to match your sparkling personality." The bot made a sound approximating laughter, a feature designed to make interactions more pleasant. "Maybe I'll do that. Save some for the rest of us, though." Ethan chuckled and grabbed his basket from the passenger seat before stepping out of the car. Saturdays were sacred to him. Coffee at his favorite cafe, grocery shopping for essentials, and then the rest of the day free to tinker with his drones or explore the latest tech forums. Life was simple, efficient, and exactly how he liked it. The automatic doors whooshed open, greeting him with a blast of cool, conditioned air and the faint hum of digital advertisements. Ethan grabbed a basket rather than a cart. He followed his father's old adage, "Never buy more than you can carry." It was one of the few pieces of advice his dad had given that stuck. Navigating the aisles with practiced ease, Ethan picked up his usual essentials: protein packs, smart beverages, and a new flavor of energy capsules promising improved mental acuity. The shelves were lined with holographic labels and augmented reality enhancements, displaying information about nutritional content and carbon neutrality. As he turned the corner toward the produce section, Ethan stopped abruptly. A woman stood by the exotic fruit display, holding a dragon fruit as if it were a live grenade. Her skin shimmered faintly, a silvery hue that seemed to catch and refract the light in mesmerizing patterns. Her hair cascaded in sleek, shimmering braids that gleamed like spun glass, and her eyes. Those eyes glowed faintly blue, like two miniature stars. She was clad in a metallic bodysuit that hugged her figure, the material shifting subtly with her movements as though alive. Ethan blinked, thinking for a moment that his augmented reality glasses were malfunctioning. He tapped the side of the frame, but the display flickered only slightly before stabilizing. The woman remained exactly as she was, otherworldly, captivating, and impossibly real. Around her, shoppers gave her a wide berth, avoiding eye contact with that peculiar American habit of pretending not to notice something extraordinary. A mother hurriedly steered her child into another aisle, the child craning his neck to get a better look. Curiosity and intrigue overpowered caution. Ethan approached, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Need help there?" The woman turned her head sharply, her movements unnaturally precise. When her eyes locked onto his, Ethan felt as though she were looking straight through him, peeling back layers of pretense and perception. Her voice, melodic yet resonant, carried an accent he couldn't place. "Is this an organic explosive?" she asked, holding the dragon fruit aloft. Ethan blinked, caught off guard by the question. "What? No. It's just a fruit. You eat it." Her head tilted slightly, the angle unnervingly precise. "Elaborate. How does one consume this fruit?" Ethan stammered, fighting the urge to laugh. "You peel it and eat it? Like, with your mouth? You've never seen a dragon fruit before." She lowered the fruit slowly, her glowing eyes narrowing in thought. "I see. So, it is not a weapon. That is reassuring. Ethan chuckled despite himself. Yeah, definitely not a weapon. Unless you throw it at someone, I guess. The woman's gaze remained fixed on him, her expression unreadable. You display humor and candor in equal measure. Interesting combination. I do my best, Ethan replied, leaning casually against the display. I'm Ethan, by the way. And you are, clearly not from around here. I am KLARAVO, she said, her tone formal. Observer Class Envoy of the Ethereal Union, assigned to the Sol System. And you, Ethan Quinn, are now designated my facilitator under Protocol 7. Ethan blinked again, unsure if he had misheard her. You're, what now? My facilitator, KLARA repeated, as if the term were self-explanatory. The first individual to provide assistance to an observer becomes responsible for their well-being and mission completion. It is an honor. Ethan's grin froze. Okay, look, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I just explained a fruit to you. That doesn't make me. Whatever you just said. Protocol 7 is binding, KLARA said solemnly, her voice unwavering. Your compliance is mandatory. Ethan glanced around, half expecting someone to jump out and yell, "You've been pranked." But no one came. Instead, KLARA placed the dragon fruit back on the display with meticulous care. To his astonishment, she reached out and touched another piece of fruit, a green banana. Before his eyes, the peel ripened instantly, transitioning from green to yellow to brown in the span of seconds. Ethan's jaw dropped. How the hell did you do that? Quantum disintegration, she said, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. A basic application of molecular manipulation. Right? Ethan said slowly, staring at the now overripe banana. Of course. That's totally normal. KLARA stepped closer, her glowing eyes boring into his. Shall we proceed, Facilitator Ethan Quinn? Time is of the essence. Ethan took a step back, holding up his hands. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Look, I don't know who, or what, you are, but I'm just a guy trying to buy groceries. I'm not qualified for whatever this is. KLARA tilted her head again. You reject the designation. Yes, absolutely, Ethan said, nodding emphatically. I reject the designation. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The designation cannot be declined. Of course it can't, Ethan muttered. She handed him the banana, her touch strangely warm against his skin. Then it is settled. You will assist me in my assessment of humanity. Ethan opened his mouth to protest but was interrupted by the sound of someone clearing their throat. The cashier was staring at them from the nearby self-checkout station, her gaze flicking between Ethan and KLARA with open curiosity. Nice costume, the cashier said to KLARA, forcing a smile. KLARA inclined her head in acknowledgement. It is not a costume, but your compliment is noted. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Okay, fine. Let's talk somewhere else before you accidentally cause a scene. The encounter in the store had left Ethan both fascinated and bewildered. As he led KLARA toward his car, her strange presence drew stares from passers-by. He felt as though he'd been pulled into a bizarre dream, one that was about to change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. And for reasons he didn't fully understand, he found himself wanting to see where it would lead. Ethan Quinn couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a sharp, uncharted detour. KLARAVO, the alien envoy, or delusional cosplayer, though the banana trick said otherwise, sat silently in the passenger seat of his cruiser, her glowing eyes scanning the dashboard with analytical precision. You assign sound to an otherwise silent transport, she observed, tilting her head in that peculiar, mechanical way of hers. Interesting. Is this for functional or psychological reasons? Psychological, I guess, Ethan said, gripping the wheel tighter than usual. People like the way it sounds. Makes the car feel alive. KLARA nodded slowly, as if processing the concept. A curious form of attachment to machinery. Does this reflect humanity's dependence on technology? Probably, Ethan replied, sighing. Look, I think we should start with the basics. If I'm your facilitator, which I'm not agreeing to, by the way, then I need to know what you're actually doing here. Why Earth? Why me? Kayla didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared out the window, her expression unreadable. Earth is at a critical juncture, she said finally. Your species stands on the precipice of either advancement or annihilation. The ethereal union requires an objective evaluation of your potential. Advancement or annihilation? Ethan echoed, glancing at her. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? Not at all, Kayla said, her tone flat. Your species' technological progress is accelerating at an unsustainable rate. Without corresponding advancements in social cohesion and environmental stewardship, your trajectory will lead to catastrophic outcomes within a century. Ethan let out a low whistle. Well, that's grim. And you're here to decide if we're worth saving. Kayla shook her head. The decision is not mine to make. My task is to observe and report. The ethereal union will determine whether humanity warrants inclusion in the interstellar community, or whether your planet must be neutralized as a potential threat. Ethan's grip on the wheel tightened further. Neutralized? As in, wiped out. Only as a last resort, Kayla said, her voice softening. The Union seeks peace above all. But when a species poses a danger to the greater galactic order, preventative measures become necessary. Ethan's stomach twisted. Well, no pressure, then. Just the fate of the whole planet hanging in the balance. Kayla's glowing eyes flicked toward him. Your sarcasm does not mask your concern. This is good. Concern indicates engagement, which suggests you may possess the qualities required to fulfill your role. Again, I didn't agree to this role, Ethan muttered, pulling into his apartment complex's parking lot. He turned off the cruiser and stared straight ahead, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. Okay, let's get something straight. I don't know who, or what, you are, but I've got my own life to deal with. I'm not some intergalactic babysitter. Kayla regarded him calmly. Your rejection of responsibility is noted. However, Protocol 7 is binding. You are my facilitator, Ethan Quinn. This is not negotiable. Ethan groaned, running a hand through his hair. Of course it's not. Fine. You can stay the night, but we're figuring out a way to undo this protocol thing tomorrow. Got it? Understood, Kayla said with a slight incline of her head. Temporary accommodations are acceptable. Ethan's apartment was a modest, one-bedroom unit in a modern complex on the outskirts of the city. The living room was sparsely decorated but functional, with sleek furniture, a large holographic display on one wall, and a collection of drone parts scattered across the coffee table. Kayla stepped inside and immediately began surveying the space with the same intense focus she had applied to the dragon fruit. Her fingers trailed over the back of the couch, the edges of the coffee table, and the frame of a holographic photograph depicting Ethan and his father at a tech expo years ago. Your dwelling reflects isolation, she remarked, holding up the photograph. This image suggests a significant relationship, yet no evidence of continued connections is present. Ethan snatched the photo from her hand, his jaw tightening. That's personal. Kayla's glowing eyes softened slightly. Observation, not judgment. Yeah, well, let's stick to observing things that aren't my life story, Ethan muttered, setting the photo face down on the kitchen counter. As he began unpacking his groceries, Kayla continued her examination, picking up various objects and studying them as if they were alien artifacts. She paused in front of the holographic display, where a paused video feed from a drone race hovered mid-action. Fascinating, she said, tilting her head. Your species derives entertainment from competitive use of technology. Does this indicate an innate drive toward innovation or merely diversion? Both, probably, Ethan said, glancing at her. Look, can you maybe not touch everything? I just cleaned. Kayla stepped back from the display, her hands clasped neatly in front of her. Your request is reasonable. I will refrain from further interactions with your belongings without permission. Thanks, Ethan said dryly, dropping a packet of protein cubes into the fridge. He turned to face her, leaning against the counter. All right, Ambassador, let's get down to business. What exactly do you need from me? Klara met his gaze with unwavering intensity. Shelter, cultural orientation, and protection from potential threats. Your primary role as facilitator is to ensure my safety and assist in my assessment of humanity. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And if I don't? The consequences would be unfortunate, Klara said, her tone carefully neutral. Unfortunate for who? You? Me? The whole planet? Potentially all three, Klara replied. Ethan sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Great. Just great. So, not only am I stuck hosting an alien, but I'm also responsible for making sure you don't blow our shot at joining the galactic community. No pressure or anything. Klara's lips curved upward slightly, a faint smile that seemed both alien and oddly human. You are adapting to your role with commendable speed. Ethan snorted. Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. As the evening wore on, Ethan found himself explaining everything from the concept of streaming entertainment to the intricacies of human social norms. Klara listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions that revealed her startlingly advanced understanding of technology and biology but an almost childlike curiosity about cultural nuances. So, Klara said, gesturing toward a stack of drone parts on the coffee table. These devices are an extension of your species' desire to overcome physical limitations. Something like that, Ethan said, assembling a small quadcopter as they talked. Drones started as tools, things to make life easier. But now, they're more than that. They're a way to push boundaries, to see what's possible. Klara nodded thoughtfully. This aligns with my observations of your technological development. Humanity's ingenuity is remarkable, but it often outpaces your ability to manage its consequences. Ethan frowned. You mean stuff like climate change and AI ethics? Precisely, Klara said. Your species excels at innovation but struggles with foresight. It is a precarious balance. Ethan set the quadcopter down and leaned back, studying her. You talk like you've got it all figured out. What about your people? Did you ever struggle with this stuff? Klara's expression grew distant. We did. Long ago, we faced challenges similar to yours. It was only through unity and sacrifice that we overcame them. That is why the ethereal union exists, to guide other species toward the same enlightenment. Unity and sacrifice, Ethan repeated. Sounds great in theory, but humans aren't exactly good at either of those things. Yet you possess the capacity for both, Klara said, her gaze piercing. That is what I must determine, whether your potential outweighs your flaws. Ethan held her gaze for a long moment, his mind racing. He wasn't sure whether to feel hopeful or terrified. Let's just take it one day at a time, he said finally. For now, I'll set up the couch for you. Tomorrow, we'll figure out a plan. Klara inclined her head. A pragmatic approach. I approve. As Ethan gathered blankets and pillows for the couch, he couldn't help but wonder what he'd gotten himself into. Hosting an alien envoy wasn't exactly how he'd planned to spend his weekend. But then again, when had his plans ever gone smoothly? Something told him this was only the beginning. Ethan Quinn awoke the next morning to the faint hum of activity in his living room. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming, but the smell of burnt circuits and the soft murmur of Klara's melodic voice dispelled any hope of that. He groaned, pulling himself upright. The events of the previous day came rushing back. The alien envoy, the Protocol 7 designation, and the impending responsibility of humanity's survival. Ethan dragged himself out of bed and shuffled toward the living room, half expecting to find Klara dismantling his drones or poking through his belongings again. Instead, she was seated cross-legged on the floor, her glowing eyes focused intently on a shimmering orb that hovered above her hands. The device emitted a faint, rhythmic pulse, its surface rippling with shifting colors. Ethan stopped in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Morning, he said, his voice thick with sleep. "What are you doing?" Kayleigh glanced up briefly before returning her attention to the orb. "Recalibrating my portable nexus. It was damaged during atmospheric entry and requires alignment to function optimally." Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching as the orb shifted its form, stretching and contracting like a living entity. "What exactly is that thing?" "It is an ethereal core," Kayleigh replied. "A multipurpose device capable of environmental analysis, data storage, and holographic projection." "Sounds fancy," Ethan said, stepping closer. "Can it, I don't know, help you explain why I've been drafted into your intergalactic assessment program?" Kayleigh's lips curved slightly in what Ethan now recognized as her version of a smile. "The ethereal core can provide visual aids to enhance understanding. Would you like a demonstration?" Ethan hesitated, curiosity battling with caution. "Sure. Why not?" Kayleigh rose gracefully to her feet, the orb following her movements like a loyal pet. She gestured toward the center of the living room, and the orb floated there, glowing more brightly. A moment later, the air shimmered, and a three-dimensional projection filled the space. Ethan's breath caught. Before him was an image of an alien city. Towering spires of crystalline structures refracted light in every color of the spectrum, and bioluminescent flora lined the streets, casting an ethereal glow over everything. The city seemed alive, its architecture pulsating faintly as if it were breathing. "This is Altheris," Kayleigh said, her voice soft. "My homeworld. It is a world of harmony, where technology and nature coexist seamlessly." Ethan stared, captivated by the sight. "It's beautiful. Like something out of a dream." Kayleigh nodded. "It was not always so. Altheris was once divided by conflict, much like your own world. Greed, fear, and mistrust nearly led to our extinction. Only through unity and sacrifice were we able to transcend our flaws." Ethan turned to her, frowning. "And you think Earth can do the same?" "That is what I am here to determine," Kayleigh said, her gaze steady. "Humanity's potential is evident, but so are your flaws. My assessment will determine whether your species is ready to join the interstellar community, or if you pose a risk to the greater galactic order." Ethan crossed his arms, his mind racing. "And what happens if you decide we're not ready?" Kayleigh hesitated, the faint glow of her eyes dimming slightly. "If the Union deems your species a threat, measures will be taken to neutralize that threat." "Neutralize?" Ethan repeated, the word bitter on his tongue. "You mean wipe us out?" Kayleigh looked away. "That is not the desired outcome, but it is a possibility." Ethan's stomach churned. "Well, no pressure, then. Just the fate of the whole planet hanging on my ability to help you blend in." Kayleigh's faint smile returned. "Your sarcasm is noted. However, I believe you are capable of more than you realize." Ethan let out a humorless laugh. "That makes one of us." As the days passed, Kayleigh's presence became an inescapable part of Ethan's life. She accompanied him everywhere, insisting that her observations required immersion in human culture. At first, Ethan tried to keep her out of sight, worried about drawing too much attention. He took her shopping for clothes, an experience that tested his patience and left her with a wardrobe of simple, unassuming outfits that did little to hide her silvery skin but at least made her look less like she'd stepped out of a sci-fi movie. Kayleigh, for her part, absorbed human culture with startling efficiency. She asked endless questions about everything, from the nuances of slang to the ethics of capitalism. Her curiosity was insatiable, and Ethan found himself both exasperated and fascinated by her relentless pursuit of knowledge. One evening, as they sat in his apartment, Kayleigh activated her ethereal core again. This time, she projected an image of Earth, its continents and oceans rendered in breathtaking detail. "Your planet is remarkable," she said, her gaze fixed on the projection. "It possesses an abundance of resources, diverse ecosystems, and a unique capacity for creativity. Yet it is fragile, vulnerable to the very species that inhabits it." Ethan frowned, leaning forward. "What do you mean?" Kayleigh gestured, and the projection shifted, showing a time-lapse of Earth's environmental degradation. Rising sea levels, deforestation, melting ice caps. Your technological advancements have come at great cost to your planet. If this trajectory continues, Earth will become uninhabitable within a century. Ethan's chest tightened. So you're saying we're doomed? I am saying you must change, Kalare said, her tone firm. Your species has the capacity to adapt and overcome challenges, but it requires unity and foresight, qualities that are currently lacking. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the weight of her words. You make it sound so simple. But humans aren't like your people. We don't just come together and fix things. We fight, we argue, we screw up. Kalare's gaze softened. And yet, you are capable of great compassion and ingenuity. I have seen it in your history, your art, your stories. These qualities give me hope. Hope, Ethan muttered, shaking his head. You've got a lot more faith in us than I do. Their uneasy partnership took a darker turn one evening when Kalare's wrist device emitted a sharp, urgent tone. She froze, her eyes narrowing as she studied the display. What is it? Ethan asked, his stomach sinking. They've found me, Kalare said, her voice tense. Who? Opposition forces, she said, rising to her feet. Not all within the Union agree on humanity's worth. There are factions that believe your species should be eliminated preemptively. Ethan's blood ran cold. And they're here? Now. Kalare nodded. They have detected my presence and are likely en route. We must leave immediately. Ethan didn't hesitate. Grabbing his keys and a backpack filled with essentials, he followed Kalare out of the apartment. As they reached the parking lot, the sky above them darkened unnaturally. Kalare's glowing eyes flicked upward. They are using disruption fields to track us. We must move quickly. Ethan started the cruiser, its artificial engine roaring to life. Where are we going? Somewhere they cannot follow, Kalare said, her tone grim. Ethan clenched his jaw, adrenaline surging through his veins. He didn't know what he was getting into, but one thing was clear. Kalare's mission was far more dangerous than he'd realized. And now, whether he liked it or not, he was a part of it. The cruiser tore through the city streets, its synthetic engine humming loudly in protest as Ethan pushed it to its limits. Kalare sat in the passenger seat, unnervingly calm despite the situation. The disruption fields that had darkened the sky above them rippled like oily waves, casting shadows that seemed to twist unnaturally over the buildings. Care to explain who these opposition forces are? Ethan asked, his voice strained as he swerved to avoid a hovering delivery drone. Kalare's hands rested calmly in her lap, her glowing eyes fixed ahead. They are a faction within the ethereal union that believes intervention in developing civilizations is a waste of resources. They see Earth's potential as outweighed by its flaws and advocate for preemptive neutralization. Ethan tightened his grip on the wheel. Neutralization. Great. So, not only is the fate of humanity on the line, but now we've got rogue aliens trying to fast-track our extinction. Kalare inclined her head slightly. That is an accurate assessment. Any chance we can fight back? Ethan asked, glancing at her. Direct confrontation is unwise, Kalare said. Their technology surpasses anything your planet possesses, and even my capabilities are limited. Our best option is evasion and strategic positioning. Ethan let out a dry laugh. Fantastic. We're running from alien assassins with no backup, no plan, and no idea where we're going. Kalare reached for her ethereal core, which floated out of her pocket and began projecting a shimmering map of the surrounding area. There is an abandoned industrial complex approximately 3.2 kilometers from our current location. It is shielded by residual electromagnetic interference that may obscure our presence temporarily. Abandoned industrial complex. Of course. Why not? Ethan muttered, turning the cruiser sharply toward the indicated route. The streets grew narrower as they entered the outskirts of the city, the towering glass and steel structures giving way to dilapidated warehouses and crumbling factories. The hum of the disruption fields grew louder, a constant drone that made Ethan's teeth ache. "They're getting closer," Kayla said, her tone betraying the faintest hint of urgency. "No kidding," Ethan snapped, slamming the accelerator. The cruiser skidded around a corner, its tires screeching on the cracked pavement. Ahead, the industrial complex loomed like a ghost from another era. Rusted metal walls and shattered windows stood as a testament to humanity's discarded ambitions. Ethan drove straight into the complex, weaving between decaying machinery and piles of rubble. "This is the best place you could think of?" Ethan asked, bringing the cruiser to a screeching halt inside what had once been a loading dock. Kayla stepped out of the vehicle, her ethereal core floating beside her. "It is sufficient for now. Come." Ethan followed her into the shadows of the complex, the sound of the disruption fields reverberating ominously overhead. Inside the complex, Kayla set to work immediately. She placed her ethereal core on the ground, and it expanded into a glowing dome of light, emitting waves of energy that pulsed outward. "What's that doing?" Ethan asked, standing nearby with his arms crossed. "Creating a localized disruption field of my own," Kayla replied. "It will interfere with their tracking systems temporarily, but it will not hold indefinitely." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "So, what's the plan? Just sit here and wait for them to leave?" Kayla turned to him, her expression uncharacteristically serious. "There is no plan that guarantees our survival. However, there is a choice to be made." Ethan frowned. "What kind of choice?" Kayla extended her hand, and the ethereal core shifted, projecting a new image. A sleek, metallic device shaped like an elongated teardrop. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly glow. "This is an isolation matrix," Kayla explained. "It has the power to sever Earth's connection to the greater galactic network. If activated, it will render your planet undetectable to all advanced civilizations, including the Ethereal Union." Ethan's eyes widened. "Undetectable? You mean they won't be able to find us? Ever?" Kayla nodded. "Correct. Earth will remain safe from external threats, but it will also be excluded from interstellar advancement. Your species will be left to evolve, or perish, on its own." Ethan stared at the projection, his mind racing. "And the other option?" Kayla's gaze softened. "We allow the assessment to continue. If humanity is deemed worthy, you will gain access to knowledge and resources that could transform your world. But if you are deemed a threat..." Ethan didn't need her to finish the sentence. He looked away, his jaw tightening. "So it's either total isolation or roll the dice and risk everything." Kayla stepped closer, her voice gentle. "This choice must be yours, Ethan. You represent your species now." Ethan let out a shaky breath, the weight of her words settling heavily on his shoulders. He thought about everything she had shown him, the beauty of her homeworld, the fragility of Earth, the potential for something greater. "What would you do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kayla hesitated, her glowing eyes filled with a rare vulnerability. "My duty is to remain impartial. But I believe in your capacity for change, Ethan. I have seen it in you." Ethan met her gaze, his thoughts swirling. Could humanity rise to the challenge? Or would they squander the opportunity and bring about their own destruction? After a long silence, he made his decision. The isolation matrix glowed faintly in the dim light of the industrial complex as Kayla prepared to activate it. Ethan stood beside her, his expression resolute. "You're sure about this?" Kayla asked, her voice quiet. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, we'll figure it out on our own. If humanity's going to make it, we have to do it without a safety net." Kayla placed her hand on the device, her fingers glowing softly as she activated the matrix. A pulse of energy rippled outward, and the air around them seemed to shimmer. Above, the droning hum of the disruption fields abruptly ceased. The sky cleared, revealing the stars overhead. "It is done," Kayla said, stepping back. "Earth is now isolated. No one will find you." Ethan let out a shaky breath, a mixture of relief and uncertainty washing over him. What happens to you now? Kayleare's gaze softened. I must return to the Union and report the outcome of my mission. My presence here is no longer necessary. Ethan swallowed hard, the thought of her leaving hitting him harder than he expected. Will I ever see you again? Kayleare's faint smile returned. Perhaps. The future is always in motion. She reached out, her hand hovering over his for a moment before withdrawing. Thank you, Ethan Quinn. You have given your people a chance. I hope they prove you right. With that, Kayleare activated her ethereal core, and a swirling vortex of light enveloped her. In an instant, she was gone, leaving Ethan standing alone in the empty complex. For a long time, Ethan stood in silence, staring at the spot where Kayleare had disappeared. The weight of his decision pressed heavily on him, but beneath the uncertainty, there was a spark of hope. Humanity had been given a second chance, a chance to change, to grow, to prove itself. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan believed it was possible.